Friday morning, everybody. We will get started in about 60 seconds. Just want to give everyone a chance to get their rooms populated. We got 7 different streams going right now. We have Rumble, good morning, YouTube, good morning, X, good morning, Facebook. My Facebook page is Work on Your Game University, Facebook/Work on Your Game University. Good morning over there. LinkedIn. I got LinkedIn as well. We got to take an extra step on LinkedIn after the stream populates. I'll take that step, make sure it's working. LinkedIn is working. Pleased to announce. Instagram is working. Good morning. TikTok is working. TikTok's for some reason just seems slow to populate the room now. We still end up getting where I expect us to get, but it seems to get a little bit slower. I don't know if that's just a figment of my imagination or if that's really happening. But TikTok, good morning. People, let me know where you are checking in from. Tell me your locations and please like the stream. Dally Mac, thank you for liking the stream early. As y'all are checking in, please tell me where you are checking in from. Tell me some locations as y'all are coming in. Give me some locations so I know where we are. I can verify that we are nationwide. I know we're nationwide. I can even verify that we are maybe even worldwide. We get some people from outside the United States, but shout out to everybody in the United States as well. Let's see what we got. New York is in the building. We're in New York. We're in New York. New York is a very big place. So New York, be more specific. Naptown. Shout out to Naptown. I know some people from Naptown. Illinois. I know some people from there as well. Duck Going Buck says Pacers in 6. I would have to agree with you. I think the Pacers will win the home game on, what is that, Saturday night. I think they will win that one. Massachusetts is in the house. We're in Massachusetts. Gary Gray, good morning. CLT, what is that? Is that Charlotte? Shout out to Charlotte. Yeah, I've been to Charlotte a few times. Shout out to Charlotte. Newburgh, New York. Okay, Carol, and I guess that's why you said New York, because I had never heard of Newburgh, New York. But shout out to Newburgh, New York. I'm going to look it up right now. Let's see where Newburgh, New York is. I will tell you all that I am in South Florida, and it is hot here. It is 8 o'clock in the morning, and it is already hot here. All right, Newburgh's not that far from New York, actually. Okay. You're not that far from New York. I mean, New York City is actually in New York, but you're not far from New York City. It's a little drive, but I see where it is. Shout out to, y'all actually southern part of New York. Okay. Learned something new this morning. So the topic here today, Bristol, Tennessee is in the house. Carlina over there on YouTube. Fit Business said Brickell on vacation for a day. Definitely different from Chicago. Yes, I haven't spent a ton of time in Chicago, but I've been there. But Brickell is definitely different from Chicago. Brickell is different from everywhere. There's nowhere in the United States that is like that area of Miami, this area of Miami. So let's see, Arizona outside of Phoenix. Shout out to Arizona. It is hot in Arizona too. There's a different kind of heat. This kind of heat right here is different than what y'all get in Arizona. Cape Cod is in the building. Shout out to Cape Cod. I have not been there. Pinehurst, North Carolina. Shout out to North Carolina. All right, so the topic here today, folks, we're going to talk about Starbucks. And I want you all to like the stream, please. As you are watching the stream, please like the stream. If you are watching this I'll put a link, because we do have clickable links over on Rumble, YouTube, X, and no, I did that privately. Let me see if I do that again. Rumble, YouTube, X, and I don't know if LinkedIn will see this. I guess they will. According to what Rumble Studio says, they will see it. I put a link for the University Circle. So if you want to get into my group coaching program that's called The Circle, you can get into that by, I need to pin my comment over on Instagram. I forgot to do that. One moment. Let me get that pinned. And that is at the link that you see there on, if you're watching on Rumble Studio, YouTube, LinkedIn, or X. And any of you who wants to get into my group coaching program that you're on one of the other apps, all you got to do is send me a direct message. Send me a direct message. My assistant will get back to you with an active link that you can click to go and see it. Or you can just click the links in my profile, because we have links for all this stuff inside of, no, I don't want this. I put the wrong comment. Let me do this again. I'm just pinning my comment over on Instagram, because Instagram I can pin comments. For whatever reason, I have not been able to pin comments on TikTok. I've been trying it over and over again, and it has not been working. and I can post the comment, but then pin in the comment. Actually, I did it last week. I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. I did it last week and it did work, but then I couldn't keep pinning it, and you can't keep it there. On Instagram, you can put a comment, you can just keep it there. But anyway, it is so hot in here. I got the fan on as high as it goes, and it's still hot in here. It is already probably 80 degrees. It is 80 degrees in South Florida right now, 8 o'clock in the morning, which is crazy. But we are still going to get into our topic, which is this Starbucks situation. Someone said, Chris said, please send some heat to Pennsylvania. I would gladly give you about 5 degrees of this heat to Pennsylvania, but we're going to deal with it anyway. I like the heat. I came here knowing that it's going to be hot, knowing that it's going to be humid. And when I say I came here, I don't mean today. I mean, when I decided to live in South Florida, I knew this is one of the trade-offs of it is that it's super hot. It wouldn't even be that hot if I wasn't wearing a suit, but I will take it. If I was wearing a t-shirt and some shorts, then I'd be fine. I wouldn't be feeling this heat, and I wouldn't have my fan on at the level that it's on. But this is all part of the game that we decided to get into. So let's get into this topic here today, which is this Starbucks situation. For those who don't know what it is, the Starbucks situation, by the way, like the live as you are watching this, please like the stream, especially those of you who are on TikTok. Like the stream. We want to get to 100,000 likes in every time we do a stream. So sometimes I forget. We should be at 50K by the time I get through this content. Starbucks recently implemented this new dress code policy that requires employees to wear solid black shirts and khaki, black, or blue denim bottoms beneath their signature green aprons. So basically, I didn't know this wasn't part of the deal before, but I guess this is now a new part of the deal over at Starbucks. The company stated that this change aims to create a consistent coffee house experience and enhance brand identity. However, the policy has sparked significant backlash from employees, interestingly enough, not really, particularly those in unionized stores. So there are a bunch of Starbucks stores that are unionized and a bunch of them that are not unionized. So the stores that are unionized, they're pushing back on this because I don't know, looks like they ain't got nothing else to do. So they're pushing back and they're arguing that the change was made unilaterally and without proper consultation. They contend, the unionized workers at certain Starbucks, that the new dress code imposes financial burdens due to the need to purchase new clothing, and it restricts personal expression. In response, over 2,000 baristas at Starbucks across more than 100 stores have participated in strikes to protest the policy. So I don't know if any of you have seen videos of these. I've seen some videos of these unionized Starbucks employees having their, sit-ins, stand-ins, protests outside the store to draw attention to themselves and let everybody know that Starbucks is doing us wrong because we're unionized, and that gives them a certain amount of power that you get that you do not get access to when you're not in the union. And they're arguing against this dress code thing because because that's why they're arguing against it. So let's have a discussion about this. This is bigger than Starbucks. I don't even drink coffee. I'm not a Starbucks customer, but it lends itself to a bigger discussion on people who are working for companies and trying to exert some power and trying to mark their territory with the companies that they work with. And of course, using the media and the public to draw more attention and sympathy, I guess, for lack of a better term, to what they have going on. And this is actually lends itself to a much bigger conversation about employees working at businesses and getting things the way that they want to get them and how much money that they're making, and how a dress code policy, what they say is that this is going to cost us more money because we have to go and buy clothes. And they say it limits our expression. So if there's a worker there who likes to wear shorts, but now they're saying you have to wear, according to what I gathered about the situation, is that you have to wear either khaki, black, or blue denim bottoms beneath your signature apron. So it doesn't say you can't wear shorts. It's just got to be khaki, black, or blue. What the hell are people wearing normally? What's being excluded here? So the solid black shirt, maybe I get that part. Maybe people don't like to wear black. Maybe you want to wear white. Maybe you want to wear green, orange, or pink. And then the other thing is they say khaki, black, or blue denim bottoms beneath your signature green aprons. I mean, what other color is there that you would wear? Khaki, black, or blue pretty much covers a lot of the bottoms that people can wear. And they don't say it has to be pants. It's just bottoms. Anyway, I think generally, just looking at this on the surface before we get into these points, sounds like these Starbucks workers ain't got nothing better to do, and they're just coming up with a reason to feel aggrieved. This sells these days. We talked about the race hustle yesterday. Today, this is more in the direction of the victim hustler. And there is money to be made in painting yourself as a victim. There's money to be made in appeasing the victims by saying things that basically go along with what they're already saying so that they all get behind you and they're happy that you exist because you're telling them things that they want to hear. So this is what we call the victim hustle. That's what we're going to label these people as. We talked about the race hustler yesterday. We will talk about the race hustler again in the future. Today, we're going to talk about the victim hustler. All right, they are doing something wrong to us. Look at me, have sympathy for me, help me out, clap for me, or whatever the hell these people are going after. Let's get into the points. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author of 41 books on 4 TEDx talks. I own this company called Work on Your Game Incorporated. What we do here is we help business people and professionals take the same tools to help athletes get to the top of the sports game, and we translate those tools to the professional and business game when it comes to sales, when it comes to mindset, when it comes to performance, when it comes to producing results, getting clarity, having clear strategies, systematizing what you're doing. And of course, this is all a results-based business. You can find out more about that at the links in my profile or the links you see on whichever platform you are watching this stream on right now. By the way, if you're on TikTok, please like the stream. We're at 5,000 likes. Can we get to 10,000, please? Can we get to 10,000 likes here? So employers, have the right. And again, I'm going to give you both sides of this conversation and my opinion along with them. Employers have the right to set dress codes to maintain brand consistency and customer experience. The Starbucks have the right to say to their employees, hey, this is the way we want you to dress because you are representing our brand, you're representing our company, and this is the way that we want you to look when you work here. The answer is, of course they do. They have that right. Now, what the unionized workers at certain Starbucks are saying is that because of our union contract, you have to negotiate with us first, or we have to come to some conclusion about this thing. You can't just tell us what we have to do. Now, here's what I have to say about this. First of all, when you're the person who is writing the checks, you're the boss, period. That's the way it works. The rule of life is the person who's writing the checks is the boss. If you work somewhere and someone is writing and signing the check that goes into your account, that person's the boss. Because as soon as you don't want to listen to the boss anymore, they can just cut off your check. Therefore, you don't work there anymore. Now, you don't have to listen to them because they're no longer your boss. But as long as you're accepting that check, they're the boss. That's the way it works in any situation in life. So does the employer have the right to set a dress code to maintain brand consistency? Of course they do. Here's where I would hold Starbucks accountable and tell them that they messed up. They messed up by not setting the tone from the beginning. That's the problem that Starbucks has. They messed up by allowing this situation to be something other than this at the beginning. So now a bunch of people have been working there. Who knows how long they've been working there, but people have come to accept or come to expect, rather, that I can express myself however I want through the way that I dress. And Starbucks was okay with it 2 weeks ago. Now they're deciding that they're not okay with it anymore. And now people are pushing back like, hey, this is the standard that you set. This is the standard that I came in with. You allowed this then. Now you're not allowing it anymore. I'm saying all that to say this. It's not that you're necessarily wrong. You decided to change your mind about standards, rules, parameters, anything that you're setting, especially when you're the person in charge. The problem with this, everybody, and I'm going to take questions and comments at the end, by the way. The problem with this is when you don't set the standard from the beginning, when you first begin, and then you try to change it later and implement new rules, you're always going to get pushback. Why? Because human nature is we are creatures of habit. We get used to doing things a certain way. So if it's been established that this is the way it goes, and then all of a sudden you come in and say, well, we're going to do it different. Yes, you can do it different with the new people who come in because they don't know anything other than the new rules that you set. But the people who have already been there for a month or a year or 5 years, they got so used to the way it was. When you come in and try to implement new stuff, they're going to resist and they're going to push back. And now this is going to be an uphill battle with a lot of friction just by nature of humans being human. So I actually hold Starbucks accountable for this for 2 reasons. Number one, what I just explained to you, they set the standard from the beginning. And number two, they're the boss. So anytime there's something going wrong between the person in charge and the people who are subordinate to the person in charge, and I'm always looking at the person in charge. How did you allow this to happen? That's the bottom line. How did you allow this to happen? And why did you allow this to happen? Why did you set the wrong standards from the beginning? I say this to entrepreneurs who I work with who hire staff. Mostly I work with small business owners, and they hire people to work for them. And often that person who works for them is working very directly and reporting directly to the entrepreneur who I'm coaching. And many a time I've had this happen. An entrepreneur in their business, they hire somebody, they do not train them properly. They don't set the proper standards, rules, parameters, and expectations up front. And that person who could have been a perfectly good worker ends up not being a good worker and has to be replaced, or they end up quitting, or they got to be fired simply because the standards were not set properly from the beginning. It's not because that worker was a bad worker. It's not because you hired the wrong person necessarily. It's because you did not have the proper system in place to set the proper expectations. Therefore, when they messed up by following your system that you didn't set properly is not really their fault. It's actually your fault. And when they're not performing, and when I say you, I mean the entrepreneur, the business owner, and they're not performing at the level that you want them to perform at, or they're not conforming to what you want them to conform to, that's because you didn't set the standards from the beginning. Because any way you set the standard at the beginning, people will follow it as long as that's the way you walk in the room. And as they say in all of life, the way you walk in the room is the way you walk out of the room. And what does that mean? That means that all of you have heard the saying that you never get a second chance to make your first impression. Everybody's heard that saying before. And that's a very true thing. If you really think about it, think about the people you've known in your life for some time, people you've known for like 5 years or more. You probably know a lot. And think about how different people who you've known for at least 5 years look at you differently, and they all have different frames through which they look at you. Why do different people look at you differently, even though you're the same person? You have evolved, yes, but your evolution has been the same to everyone as it's been to everybody else. So why do different people look at you differently? It depends on how they met you. How they met you is often the frame that is set that you can't undo when it comes to almost most of the people that you know. There are some people out there, I would say hopefully your parents or maybe your kids, who over time, they can evolve their view of you and their image of you that they have in their own minds as you evolve and as you change over time. But most of the people you know, people you met in business, people you met at work, people you just met, I don't know, out in the street, doing whatever it is that you do, ripping and running, they're usually going to look at you the same way that they looked at you the first time that they came across you. However they met you is how they're going to view you. And I'm saying all that to say Starbucks, y'all messed up by setting the tone like this from the very beginning. Y'all messed it up. So what the staff says, the workers who are going against Starbucks, they say when you implement a dress code change without consulting the union, you are possibly violating labor laws regarding collective bargaining, more requiring collective bargaining. My response to that is to the Starbucks staff, if they truly believe that, then what are you protesting for? Just go to court. Here's our thing about protesting. I'm not a fan of protesting. I'm not a fan of people going and making a whole bunch of noise to let everybody know that, hey, we're being victimized. We want to let you know about it, even though protesting and peaceful gatherings are in the Constitution. So you are allowed to gather peacefully if that's what you want to do. However, I'm not a fan of the concept of protesting. There's a lot of things you're allowed to do legally and I'm not a fan of. And I'm sure you have a list yourself. The reason, what I'm saying about these Starbucks people is that if they truly believe that their collective bargaining agreement has been violated and a labor law is being violated, then there's no need to protest. If you're violating the law, I'm not going to protest. I'm going to call the police or I'm going to call my lawyer and I'm going to prove that you're violating the law. And conversation's over. All right, that's it. So if the Starbucks employees are protesting, then something tells me that these things that they're alluding to, that the union contract is not being honored or labor laws are being violated, tells me that sounds good, but I don't think they truly believe it. Because if they did, again, call your lawyer. You're a union, so call the head of your union. The head of the union call the lawyer. The lawyer sends a letter off to Starbucks, and the situation should get settled somehow, some way. The problem with them doing that, even if they did it, is number one, Starbucks has a lot of lawyers too, and Starbucks has a lot of money, so they can just drag a situation out in court for so long that the union workers or the union itself is going to run out of money to pay lawyers going back and forth with Starbucks in court. So that might be the reason why they're protesting instead, to try to draw public sympathy to their situation rather than take it to a legal situation, because they might not be able to win legally, even if they believe they have a legal leg to stand on. This is what happens in the legal system. That's why I've said this many times, that if you don't have the money to go back and forth in court, depending on who you're going against, you probably want to stay out of the legal system. You probably don't want to do it. Because, again, the legal system in the United States is not about right or wrong, innocent or guilt. It is about, can you afford to prove your point? That's what the legal system is in the United States. So these unionized workers who are working at Starbucks, how much money do people earn working at Starbucks? Does anybody know? Like, what's the average income for a barista at Starbucks? Let's find out. ChatGPT can help us. What is the average income for a barista working at Starbucks? Let's see if we can find out how much you earn when you work at Starbucks. I'm going to get this information so I can draw a bigger picture. As of the most recent data, the average income for a barista working at Starbucks is national average is somewhere between $15 and $17 per hour. In bigger cities like New York or San Francisco, it might be $18 to $20 an hour. So a weekly income, assuming that you're working full time, is that you might make about, at the high end workers, $800 a week, $3,200 a month, $38,000 a year. And Starbucks also offers tips. This is the reason why Starbucks now has the tips thing. They ask for tips. I never give tips on these kind of things. We could probably talk about that later. There is some eligible employees can get stock. They can invest in Starbucks stock, which is a good idea. I am an investor in Starbucks. You can get some health benefits. It's not actual money, but it's money you don't have to spend. And then allegedly you can get college tuition support and you get Spotify. Okay. So just looking at the money, the Starbucks barista might be earning $40,000 a year, which is a little under the national average of income. I'm saying all that to say this: how much can they afford to pay a union in the first place? So Starbucks has unionized employees, but how much money can they even pay into the union for union dues? How much money does that union have, and where are they getting it from? They're getting it from the employees. You're making $38,000 a year. What the hell are you gonna? You can't go to court. This is the reason why they're protesting. So I'm reasoning through this whole situation while I'm talking to you all. All right, they can't afford to go to court. They can't afford a lawyer. Not against Starbucks, they can't. So this is the situation. This is why, again, they're victim hustling and telling everybody publicly. The reason I know about this is because I saw it on the internet. They are victim hustling and letting everybody know, hey, everybody, do you see how bad Starbucks is doing us? Feel bad for us and jump into this conversation and put some pressure on Starbucks publicly to get them to capitulate to what we, the workers who don't have the power to make them do anything, to what we actually want. And we got to say that it's working on some level because, number one, I'm talking about it. Number two, there's a bunch of people who actually agree with the Starbucks workers. I generally do not. And number three, Starbucks is a publicly traded company. And this is a tactic that does work. If you put public pressure on a publicly traded company, you can negatively affect the performance of their stock and the performance of that public company. And it can, with the bad public relations, the bad PR that they're getting, it can force their hand and make them do stuff that they otherwise wouldn't have done if they didn't have the negative PR. This does work. So you can't be mad at the union workers for doing what they're doing. I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to be in a position where I have to do that. I never want to be in a position where I have to protest something, which is basically complaining out loud to the world, publicly complaining about a situation because I have no other recourse to get anything done. I never want to put myself in that position. I'm not that type of person. Even if I think something is being done wrong, and even if I feel like I've used up all the resources or options that I see in front of me, I'm not going to go grab a picket sign and protest, because I could actually be kind of figuring out what else could I do that I haven't thought of yet, rather than standing outside with a picket sign protesting. But that's just me. Continuing. On the Starbucks side, they say a standard dress code can promote a professional appearance and it can streamline employee attire. Of course it can. I mean, that's the reason why there are dress codes in businesses. If you go to Target, every time I'm in Target, all the workers are wearing khaki pants and a red Target shirt. I'm just trying to imagine the last time I was in Target. Everybody who was working there was dressed the same way. There's a red Target shirt and there's khaki pants. I don't see anybody in Target wearing anything other than that. Why? Because they got a dress code. And the dress code is setting the tone for everybody looks like this. You know a Target worker when you see one, because they all look exactly the same. And it streamlines the way the things go. Everybody's dressed the same way. Then it leads to them acting the same way when it comes to following the procedures of the business, and everything else follows behind it. I believe it was Norman Schwarzkopf who's credited with saying, "Shined shoes save lives." Shined shoes save lives. Now, what exactly does that mean? That means that if we start with the small things and get everybody on the same page and following the small disciplines, then it will be easier to stack bigger disciplines on top of it, which is exactly what I told you a moment ago. This is the reason why I got to hold Starbucks accountable for this whole thing even becoming a thing, because they didn't set the small standards from the beginning. And now the employees are like, well, how are you going to come in the middle of the game and try to change the game? As Jay-Z says in his song, you can't change the player's game in the ninth inning. They're trying to change these guys' game after the game already started, and I understand the pushback. Starbucks can still, push their thing through, whatever it is they want to do, but they made it a whole lot harder on themselves by the way that they went about this. So the pushback against that is mandating a new clothing standard means that the employees got to go out and buy clothes. This is a kind of a weak argument because people can buy clothes whenever they want, but legally, I understand, logically, they can still make this point that, I got to go buy clothes. So years ago, those of you who are old enough to remember, if you follow sports, the NBA instituted a dress code. This was probably like early 2000s. They instituted a dress code because at the time, Allen Iverson was still a very popular player. This is like during the tail end, but still the height of his popularity, like the back end of his popularity. And y'all know Allen Iverson. So he had the cornrows and he had all these tattoos and he would wear all this jewelry and he would be in this basically street attire, what we would call street attire now. You never saw Allen Iverson in a suit. Right? Never saw him dressed up in a suit or in any business casual, not even business casual clothing. He didn't dress like that. And Allen Iverson was, first of all, very influential himself because he was so popular and because that's the way everybody dressed. Outside of the NBA, that was just the normal style of dressing, especially for young black males at that time. I used to dress that way too. I didn't have all the diamonds Allen Iverson had, but all the other things, I was dressed like that too. And you would see players come into the game, or even sometimes you watch a basketball game, you see the players sitting on the bench and they're not in uniform. They would just have street clothes on. They would be dressed kind of like Allen Iverson. So they would have on jerseys. This was when everyone was wearing jerseys. People have on, I don't know if they were hats so much, but you would see do-rags. Allen Iverson wore those all the time. You would see all kinds of jewelry. You would see baggy jeans, Timberland boots. And the NBA, specifically David Stern, who was the commissioner of the NBA at that time, David Stern understood that the NBA was a very corporate entity. And those of you who don't know, the NBA is very corporate, extremely corporate. And the majority of their money comes from corporate. NBA is not some street league. It is not some grassroots, the everyday people. That's not where they get most of their money. They get most of their money from corporate entities. And if you're trying to make money in corporate, you can't be walking in the room looking like Allen Iverson. I don't care how good you are. It's not going to work because the people in corporate, guess how they're dressed? All right? They are in business attire. They're in suits. They're in button-up shirts. They're in dress shoes. That's the way they dress. And the general rule of life is that people tend to know, like, and trust and work with people who look how they look and see things how they see things. So if you're going and talking to somebody who's dressed like I'm dressed and they're in a business suit, you walk in dressed like Allen Iverson, you already started off on the wrong foot in the conversation. And David Stern, who was the commissioner of the NBA, he's looking at the players because they're the product. He's saying, all right, how are we going to keep getting corporate money if our players are looking like they're coming off the street out of some damn rap video? All right, this is not going to work. And David Stearns is a white guy, lawyer, legally trained lawyer. And the corporate people he's talking to look, sound, and have the same background as he does. All right. And David Stern, I believe, was from the J community. Is that correct? Somebody co-signed that, confirmed that? I think he was. I think David Stern comes from the J community. So, and a lot of people he's trying to get money from, they also do. They don't come from where Allen Iverson's from. So even though they can enjoy Allen Iverson, the player, they are not seeing eye to eye with this guy. And he was one of the biggest, most popular parts of the product in the NBA at that time. And if you remember, before Allen Iverson came around, the most popular player before Allen Iverson was a guy named Michael Jordan. Now, go look up some videos, some photos of how Michael Jordan looked when he walked into the game. Let me see if I can find a photo. What do we call it? What's called arena entrance. But Michael Jordan always looked the same. And O-Dog said, yeah, he was a J person. That's what I thought. Yeah, so Michael Jordan, when he would come into the game, I'm trying to find a picture. I don't even know what to search here to find a picture of Michael Jordan when he walked into the game. But I found a picture of Michael Jordan at a press conference. So y'all can see it right here. Here's Michael Jordan. Here it is. Michael Jordan at a press conference. As you can see, he has a sport jacket on. It looks like a turtleneck or just a plain black shirt behind him. But Michael Jordan was a guy who dressed business casual or business formal. You would see Michael Jordan in a full suit and tie with a trench coat, all that, just to come to the game and after the game. You never saw Michael Jordan in casual clothing. Let me not say never. You would see him in casual clothing maybe after a shoot around or something like that. But before and after actual games, Michael Jordan was in a suit all the time. And Michael Jordan made a whole lot of money from corporate America. Do you think that's a coincidence? No, it's not. David Stern came in with the dress code because Michael Jordan was no longer the standard because Michael Jordan wasn't around. Michael Jordan had retired. And now, this next wave of guys, we got Allen Iverson. And then you had somebody like Kobe Bryant, who is not a street guy and not from the hood, but Kobe Bryant was, for some periods, and you can read books on Kobe. I've read several of them. Kobe Bryant was influenced by that stuff because he is young and black and he does play basketball. And Allen Iverson was super popular with the street crowd. And Kobe Bryant wanted to get some street credibility. And you'll hear, again, Shaq talked about this a lot, and a bunch of books written about Kobe talk about this, that Kobe started to adopt the same dressing habits as Allen Iverson because he was trying to relate himself more to the street crowd because Kobe Bryant was not a street guy. Again, his pops was a pro basketball player. He had money. He doesn't come from the hood or the ghetto. And these are the two most popular players you got, Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant. So David Stern's like, all right, we got to do something about this. And it's not like he could go call them and say, hey, Alan, put on a suit like Michael Jordan. That wasn't going to happen. So they instituted a dress code. NBA instituted a dress code. I don't remember what year this was. And the thing was, you can't wear jerseys, and they talked about all the stuff you can't do. Now, you can't wear all this gaudy jewelry. You can't be having hats on, no do-rags, no baggy clothes, no Timberland boots. And they basically are cleaning it up. And the head of the Players Association at the time was this guy named Marcus Camby. And I remember him saying this. And Marcus Camby said that, hey, if you're going to institute a dress code for us, then you need to provide a stipend, NBA. You provide a stipend to the players so that we can use that money to go buy these clothes that you're telling us that we have to wear. Now, a lot of people thought that was a ridiculous thing for the NBA Players Union to say. Because they're like, wait a minute, you dudes are already making millions of dollars playing basketball. You're telling me that the league needs to give you money for you to just buy some different clothes or wear some different clothes when you go to and leave the game. But the point is still logically, it is still a legitimate point. Why? Because if you already set the standard that I can dress how I want to dress, and these are the clothes I got in my closet, but now you're coming in and saying, well, no, you can't dress that way. You got to dress this way. Well, I don't have those clothes in my closet. I shouldn't have to take that money out of my paycheck to go buy those clothes. If you're telling me this is the way I got to dress, either provide me the clothes or give me the money to go buy it. That is a legitimate argument, even though it may sound silly, depending on who it's coming from. Like NBA players saying you got to give us a stipend to go buy clothes. They still instituted dress code, by the way. The players didn't get a stipend. They still instituted dress code. And what's happened over the years is that they've relaxed that dress code to the point that it might as well not exist anymore. There was never an announcement that said there's no more dress code in the NBA. But look at players now going into and coming out of the games. This is the reason why, and I'm going to get the questions and comments at the end, by the way. This is the reason why they have there's like a fashion show runway now when the players come to the game. There's a whole thing now, right? The fit, the pregame fit. So you see WNBA players doing this. You see NBA players doing this. And it's almost as if they come to the game, or actually, excuse me, before they come to the game, they're thinking about, okay, there's this walkway between the parking lot and the locker room, and there's going to be a bunch of cameras looking at me. What am I going to wear so that I can get some attention to myself on social media in between this? Personally, I understand why the NBA is doing it because it just draws more attention. It's just more content, more media, and content is a beast that needs to be fed. So I understand it. While at the same time, on the players' side, I'm not a big fan of it as a player. If I was talking to a player, I'm not a big fan of this. Why? Because if you're taking all that time to think about what you're going to wear into and out of the game, how much time are you focusing on your actual performance? And any amount of material, any amount of, resources mentally you're putting into what am I going to wear so I can walk into the game, so I can get on camera. Those are resources that you're not putting into, let me get myself mentally ready to actually do my job, which is playing basketball. This is not a fucking fashion show. How about you just decide what you're going to wear every game and just show up in that every time, not looking like you were thinking about the runway before the game. Anytime I see a player who looks like they were thinking about the runway before the game, most of the time those players, I'm thinking this player is not going to give the best they could give because they were focusing on their clothing. Now, are you a fashion model or are you a basketball player? And WNBA, same thing. You see players in WNBA can't make a layup, but it looks like they plan out their fashion for every game. Now, how is that? And in the men's league, you're going to get called out for that. In the women's league, they kind of let it go because females are a different animal, but y'all get my point. So mandating this new clothing purchase can impose financial strain on employees, which is the reason that I made this whole point. And if you're a Starbucks barista earning $38,000 a year, it's a much stronger point than if you're an NBA player earning $38,000 a day. There's two different conversations, but it is a financial strain on employees because you're telling them that they got to go buy some clothes that they otherwise may not have. And that kind of puts the ball back in the court of the company to, or how are you going to provide for this? But on the Starbucks side, uniform policies can help customers easily identify staff and reinforce brand image, which is what I said earlier. You go into Target, everybody's in khaki pants and a red Target shirt. You can spot a Target worker a mile away inside the store because they're all dressed exactly the same. Now, Starbucks, again, they're saying that we can create that same brand image. But the pushback is this restrictive dress code may suppress individual expression and negatively impact employee morale. So this is one of the arguments of the unionized Starbucks workers. They're saying that this dress code is restrictive. It does not allow me to individually express myself, and it could negatively impact the morale of the staff who works here at the store. My response to that is emotionally, all that sounds great. Logically, bullshit. Emotionally, it all sounds good. I ain't mad at what they're saying. I get what they're saying. And if I was on their side and they asked me to build a case for them, this would be a big part of the case because this is an emotional argument. It is purely subjective. There's no way to rationally prove it because there's nothing to rationally prove. It's an emotional argument, and emotional arguments work. Emotional arguments work to influence and persuade public perception on a subject. And most people are not able to see through emotional arguments and call out the logical bullshit in it. I'm calling out the logical bullshit while at the same time giving them credit, saying if I was on their side, I would tell them to say this. And if I'm not on their side, I would say this is bullshit. So it can work depending on what side of the conversation that you're on. But individual expression, if I'm running a business and somebody says to me, Dre, Mr. Boss Dre, you giving us a dress code, this dress code is too restrictive and it restricts my individual expression. By the way, can we get some likes on TikTok? I forgot to tell y'all that. Can we get the likes up on TikTok? We're at 16,000 likes. We need to be at 20,000, folks. Can we get the 20,000 likes on TikTok? Like the damn stream. So I would say back to them, mofo, this is not a place for individual expression. You want to express yourself individually, you need to go to Michael's Arts and Crafts, buy yourself some canvas and some paint, and you go express yourself on your easel. All right, then you want to express yourself, go get on TikTok and do a dance. You can express yourself all you want. But when you come into my business and you're working for me, this is not a place for your individual expression. That ain't what this is. All right, this is a place where we have a system and a process that gets followed. Here's your process. Here's the job you're going to do. Here's how your job is measured. Here's how you will be held accountable. And if you don't want to do your job the way that the job is laid out, then you don't have to work here. But I'm in charge here, and you're going to do things the way I say do them. So you are coming to me talking about individual expression as if that's some expectation of this job. Somebody told you wrong. That is not what this job is about. So what we doing here? You want to work here or do you not? Now, that's what I would say. Now, Starbucks is a bigger company, and they can't talk to all their employees at the same time, nor do they probably don't have people who would talk to their staff that way because there's a bunch of people who are Starbucks, not only the employees, but the customers. A lot of Starbucks customers have sympathy for the plight of the Starbucks worker. And I'm not talking about in this situation with the clothing. I'm talking about a lot of people have sympathy for the Starbucks worker along the lines of these people only make X amount of dollars and life costs this many dollars. These people may not be earning a living wage or they don't have enough to pay for all these things. And there's this woman on X who I see all the time. Her name is Nina Turner, Black woman. And she's almost every time I see her pop up, she's doing the different version of the same post that anybody who works a job like McDonald's or Starbucks, they should be able to pay for their housing, their car, their kids, childcare, and all their food on a salary that they earn at a place like McDonald's or a place like Starbucks. She's always saying this all the time. This is just part of her brand and her hustle, which is I don't know if it's working or not, but every once in a while I'll respond to her nonsense and call it out. But the thing is, Nina Turner has a lot of people who agree with her. And there's a whole lot of Nina Turners out there who don't have big social media followings and don't do media interviews who agree with this, that the Starbucks employees should be making more money and they have sympathy for their situation. This is the reason why Starbucks, you go to Starbucks, you order the coffee, is like $7 and you pay the $7 and before you finish your transaction, they ask you, do you want to give a tip? Again, what am I giving you a tip for? It costs $7 for the damn coffee. If you want more money, just charge more for the coffee. That's always been my mindset when it comes to this optional tipping thing. In any place, there are certain places I'm used to tipping. So back when I used to go to the barbershop, and by the way, I do have hair. I just shave every day. But when I used to go to the barbershop, I would tip the barber. If I go to a restaurant, I will tip the waiter. But nowadays, people asking for tips and they ain't even doing shit. I went to a place where they have the packaged up food. It's called Ideal Nutrition down here in South Florida. And they had it packaged up like this food that's in a refrigerator, but you could see it and you could pick out the little meal and you take it home, you heat it up and eat it. Even in a place like that, they have so you get the food, you pull it out the refrigerator, you walk up to the counter, you put it on the counter, they scan it, put it in a bag for you, and then they ask you for a tip. They don't ask, but when you do the checkout, it asks you, do you want to leave a tip? What am I tipping you for? You literally did not move. You've been saying, when I walked in, you were standing behind the counter. I'm checking out, you're still standing there behind the counter. All you did was grab your little scanner, hit the little button. Maybe you put my stuff in a bag for me. And if I want the receipt, you gave me the receipt. What am I tipping you for? You didn't do anything that is worthy of a tip. Are you getting paid to work here? Yes. Okay. How much you make per hour? Okay. There's your money right there. What am I giving you a tip for? I don't understand this. But there are a lot of people who agree with it and they give tips on these kind of things. And they will go in I go to a restaurant, for example. Let's say I order some food to go. So I order it online. I go to the restaurant to pick it up. But when I'm placing my order, I'm asked if I want to leave a tip. What the hell am I tipping you for? I'm coming to you to pick up my food. What am I tipping you for? I will tip a delivery driver. I usually don't order delivery, but I will order delivery. Like I ordered Whole Foods delivery this morning, as a matter of fact. I tipped the driver. The stuff I ordered was like $50. I tipped the driver $5. I'm going to do that because you actually did something. You went and got the stuff. You put it in your vehicle. You drove to me and you dropped it off at the door. Okay, I'll give you a tip for that. Now, I'm coming to a restaurant and I'm picking up the food. I ain't tipping you shit. I'm paying for the food. It ain't enough money, then go get a different job or raise the prices. And then I can decide if I want to pay that price or not. But I don't get this whole concept of this added on tips. But I guess this is where we are. And I guess this is where we're staying, at least in big cities. Any of you who live in a smaller town, maybe they're not doing this yet. But in big cities, this is everywhere you go. They're giving you the option of tipping the workers, even though the worker is just standing at the counter doing literally the same job they were doing before we had this whole tipping thing. So let's continue. Restrictive dress codes, suppressing individual expression. Forget it. I don't care about that. Negatively impacting employee morale. Again, if I'm a small business owner, and Starbucks is not a small business. If I'm a small business owner and I got 5 employees and they come to me saying this, I say, I don't give a fuck about your individual expression. And if any of you wouldn't feel good here, your morale would go down because you can't individually express yourself, let me know. I will fire you now and I will go hire someone who doesn't have that problem. All right, that's the way it's going to go. That's what I would say to my staff. Now, Starbucks, again, is a much bigger business. They are not a small business. They have PR to worry about because they're a publicly traded company. They can't do that. So Starbucks has themselves a bigger problem here. And again, this is why I said Starbucks got to be held accountable for even allowing this to occur in the first place. So moving on, providing free branded apparel, as Starbucks did with the shirts, can ease the transition to new dress codes. So Starbucks, this is what I would say to Starbucks. They want a clear resolution to this based on what the union workers are saying. All they got to do is give everybody 2 work shirts. And any of you ever work in retail, you get 2 work shirts. When I worked at Foot Locker, they give you 2 of those striped referee shirts. When I worked at McDonald's, you get 2 of those shirts. And maybe if you're full-time, maybe you get 3. Then they give you the shirts. When I worked at McDonald's, I think they even gave you the pants too. I can't remember. I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school. I think they gave you the pants. Anybody's worked at McDonald's recently, tell me if they gave you the pants. But at Foot Locker, they gave you the shirts. At McDonald's, they give you the shirts. When I worked at a water ice stand, they gave you the shirts. So you give the staff the shirts. It's a little bit different with pants because people are different waist sizes and all of that. So it might be trickier, but it can ease the transition. Maybe Starbucks will just figure out how do we give everybody pants or shorts or whatever they want. Then maybe they get to choose 1 shorts and 1 pants, whatever they want. And then we can move forward with this. That's going to cost Starbucks a lot of money. They probably don't want to spend it. But they put themselves in this position. Now, the pushback on that is limited provision of apparel may be insufficient for employees who work multiple shifts, which leads to additional personal expenses. In other words, if you're working several hours a week or a lot of hours per week at the job, even though they provided you the shirts, you might need more shirts. So let's say you work at McDonald's and they give you 2 shirts, but you're working like 5 days straight and you didn't do laundry yet. So you need a 3rd shirt or a 4th shirt. The company will charge you for the 3rd or 4th shirt, or if they want to. The manager can probably give it to you if they want to, but that goes into their costs. So they got to explain that to corporate at some point and on some level. So again, this is kind of a clusterfuck for Starbucks because they got to figure this out. And they're responsible for this. Ultimately, I want to make sure I keep emphasizing that. Can we get the likes up on TikTok? We're only at 22,000. Can we get the 25,000 likes on TikTok? Those of y'all who are watching. Please tap the screen. Let's get the likes up on TikTok. So the clear dress codes policies can reduce ambiguity and ensure consistency across locations. Again, this is the Starbucks point. This is the reason why they came up with the rule in the first place. The problem is these unilateral policy changes can erode trust between management and employees, especially in unionized settings. So this is one of the reasons, for those who don't understand, why a lot of companies try to stop their employees from creating unions. One of the reasons that companies don't like their staff creating a union is because it creates this antagonistic relationship between the company and the union, because anything that the union doesn't want to do, they can just gather up steam and say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to negotiate. And it's almost like it makes it into we're partners in what we do. And this is what happened in the NBA. Excuse me. There didn't used to be a union in the NBA. And in NFL, there's a union. In every sport, there's unions. In a lot of businesses, there are unions. Some of you are probably members of unions where you work right now. And a lot of times companies don't want their staff to unionize because, well, first of all, the company does not no longer has unilateral power when their staff unionizes, because now you got to negotiate with the union on a lot of things that you want to do. Secondly, the union can now leverage its own power because a union as a group has more power than just individual workers gathered together. Union can leverage its own power and its own voice to make the company look bad, which is bad PR for the company. That can impact you negatively, even in a small town, let alone a national company like Starbucks, international company like Starbucks. And they can fight with ink. They can fight with PR. I'm trying to adjust my fan. It's so hot in here. They can fight with PR on any subject that they want to fight with. This is another reason why companies try to stop their staff from unionizing. But the main reason companies or staff likes to unionize is because it gives them more leverage. All right, we can demand more money. We can get better work hours. We can demand better working conditions. All these things they want to use against the company to hold the company accountable. So I understand, the angle on both sides. Why some staff will want to unionize and why a company does not want their staff to unionize, because then it becomes this trust issue between management and employees, and it becomes this antagonistic relationship between the managers and the workers, especially when they have a union. Because anytime they have a problem, instead of going to the boss and talking to the boss about the problem, now you go to the union about the problem. And now it becomes a much bigger issue than it even needs to be. There's a whole lot of bureaucratic red tape that gets introduced. And this becomes just a sloppy situation that companies really don't like to deal with. So again, this is the reason why a lot of companies don't like when their staff unionizes. But the staff, they know the company doesn't want them to unionize. It's one of the reasons why the unions actually come together. But the issue with the union is that you're only as strong as the leverage that you have. You have no leverage. It doesn't really matter that you have a union. And in the NBA, for example, those who don't know about this. So in the NBA back in the late 90s, so this is after Michael Jordan won that last championship in Chicago in 1998, the NBA had a lockout. So a lockout is like the inverse of a strike. A strike is when the players say, we are not going to work because we want to demand this, that, and the third. A lockout is when the owners say, you can't come to work because we want to make some demands. So it's basically the different version of the same thing. Two sides of the same coin. So there was a lockout in 1998. That lockout came at a time when there was no salary cap in the NBA. There used to not be a salary cap in the NBA. In other words, any player could negotiate a contract for any amount of money, total or any amount of money per season. And what had recently happened, and this one didn't cause an uproar, was Michael Jordan got paid his last 2 seasons in the NBA because his contract was up. After 1996, he was on his old contract, but his last 2 years, 97, 98, Michael Jordan got a $30 million contract for 1 season, and then a $33 million contract for the second season when he won the second championship. And that was a lot of money. Nobody had ever made that much money as a player for 1 season in the NBA, but it didn't cause a lot of uproar because Michael Jordan was the best player in the world. Everybody knew he was the best player, and he was worth more to the Chicago Bulls in the NBA than even the $30 or $33 million he had received. Now, he was worth more than that, and he had made $63 million in those 2 years. There are players in the NBA that are going to earn more than that in 1 season over the next 5 years, and none of them is as good as Michael Jordan. So the money has ballooned ridiculously, and now that's even with a salary cap. So a salary cap, for those who don't know, is the maximum amount of money a team can spend with penalties if they happen to go over. And these penalties can be very stiff, and there's a maximum amount a player can earn based on certain criteria, how long you've been in the league, what accolades have you won, et cetera, et cetera. But what had gotten people really excited, and not always in a positive way, were 2 contracts specifically. Actually, it was 3. So it was one in the earlier 90s. This player got drafted to the NBA named Glenn Robinson, and he got a $68 million contract before he even played a game. Now, some of you don't know who Glenn Robinson is. Glenn Robinson, I don't think, won a championship in the league, and if he did, he didn't win it as a major player on his team. He got $68 million, which was a lot of money at that time, for like a long contract. I think it was a 13-year contract for $68 million. And this guy had not proven anything yet. And Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, players like that, the older generation, they talked about this a lot. They said, when we came into the league, we had to actually prove ourselves. They got a contract, but it wasn't for a ton of money. It might be $1 million. We had to prove ourselves on the court by performing. Then we got a whole bunch of money. but we didn't get a whole bunch of money before we had proven anything. Now you see players coming into the league getting a bunch of money and they ain't proving shit. And contracts like Glenn Robinson's and many others, these players got all this money up front based on potential before they had performed, and then they didn't live up to the potential. They didn't live up to the money, and now the owners are looking at themselves like, okay, we need to save ourselves from ourselves because we're paying these players off potential, and then we end up being wrong. We still got to pay this guy because it's a guaranteed contract, and he's not performing up to what we're paying him. So basically, you're overpaying for someone who's not as good as what you agreed to pay them. So owners wanted to be saved from themselves. Second one that I want to bring up, and there were a bunch, but I'm bringing up a couple of examples. Second one was Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal signed a contract for $120 million, and that was a lot of money. Now, again, no one was questioning whether Shaquille O'Neal was good, but at the same time, Michael Jordan never had a contract for $120 million. I don't think Michael Jordan, in all his contracts put together, earned $120 million. Actually, I'm pretty sure he did not. Shaq signed a contract for $120 million in the mid-'90s, and Shaq had not even won a championship yet. He didn't win his first championship until 2000. So we're giving this guy all this money, and people, no one said Shaq's not good, but at the same time, people say he ain't won a championship yet. Michael Jordan got all these championships. He never got that much money, and this is kind of getting ridiculous. Third was a guy named Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett signed a contract for $126 million, a little bit more than Shaquille O'Neal. And this is the game that gets played. And if you have a good agent, this is what they do. They say, well, this guy got this much, and my guy should get a little bit more than that. So Kevin Garnett got $126 million, even though Kevin Garnett was never better than Shaquille O'Neal. He got this contract for $126 million, and this is when there started to be some uproar. This is in the late 90s, Garnett got that contract. And Kevin Garnett famously said at the press conference, this was not about money. After he got a contract for $126 million. And the owners are all like, wait a minute, these salaries are getting a little bit too big. We are paying these players a little bit too much money. We need a fix for this situation. What the owners wanted, because again, the owners are the ones writing the checks. So all they had to do was say no. Just say no, then the player doesn't get all his money. But the owner said, we want to put a system in place that prevents us from giving players contracts this big. So in 1998, after the Bulls won the championship, Michael Jordan, they had a lockout. The owner said, y'all can't play. We are going to renegotiate this collective bargaining agreement. Collective bargaining agreement is the agreement between the ownership and the union. And the NBA has a union. So in this negotiation, what happened is, because the NBA missed half the 1999 season, for those who don't remember, that year they only played 50 games, usually play 82. They didn't play 82 games because the lockout went into what would have been the season. They didn't start the season until like February of 1999. And this is when Michael Jordan retired. They instituted a salary cap. So now the maximum contract at that time, the way it was set up, maximum contract became something like $70 million. So I remember Allen Iverson signed a contract for about $70 million. Kobe Bryant signed the same contract, about $70 million. Vince Carter, about $70 million. It was a little bit over $70 million. That became the maximum amount of money you could make. So compare that to Shaq's 120, Kevin Garnett's 126. Now the max you can make. Allen Iverson was worth 120 or 126 if Kevin Garnett was. Kobe Bryant, same thing. Their salaries got capped out based on this new collective bargaining agreement. Then years go on, and what was happening was this maximum contract was for like 7 years. So it's a long contract. 7-year contract, maybe $70 million. So you're still paying a player $10 million a year. What happened is a bunch of players signed those long contracts, 7-year contracts, but all of you know basketball careers are very short. So a player who looks great when he signs a 7-year contract, by the time they're into the 4th, 5th, 6th year of that contract, they may not be playing so well anymore. Yet you still have to pay this player $10 million a year. So the union, not the union, the owners in 2011, they said, we got to do this again. We got to figure this out again. So in 2011, this is after the Dallas Mavericks beat the Heat in the finals, there was another lockout. And again, shortened the NBA season. Not as long this time, but still shortened the season. They only played, I believe, 66 games in 2011 going into 2012. This is when LeBron won his first title period. Yeah, playing with the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade. What they did then was they shortened the length of the contract. So there was more money to be made because the pie had gotten bigger, but they shortened the length of the contract. So now the max contract would be like 4 years instead of 7 years. Also, another thing that happened, and the reason I'm pointing this out, is that when it comes to unions and ownership, the actual leverage is always to the owners. The leverage always goes to whoever has the most money. There's the golden rule, the real golden rule, which is whoever has the most gold makes the rules. That's how it works. The golden rule, some people believe, is do unto others as you want others to do unto you. That's one golden rule. That's the preschool golden rule. The actual golden rule is whoever has the gold makes the rules, and the owners have all the gold. So what happened in 1998 when they had the NBA lockout, the players knew what the owners were trying to do. They're trying to limit how much contracts can be gotten for, even though there's more money. They're trying to limit how much players can get in their contracts, and they want to put all these limits on how much money the players can make. And the players are like, these guys are already making a ton of money. Why are they trying to limit our money? And the players said, no, we're not going to do this. We are not going to allow them to limit our money. So how did they end up limiting the money? Anybody know the answer to the question? How did the NBA owners end up limiting the money of the players in 1998? And again, they did it in 2011. Do you know how they did it? Not how, but rather why they did it. Can we get the likes up on TikTok? Can we get the 30,000 likes, please? Why did the NBA, why were they able, the owners, why were they able to limit the money of the players, even though the players said, we're not going to let them limit our money, but they end up limiting the money anyway? Does anybody know the answer to the question? I'll answer it for you, since I don't know if any of you know the answer. Answer is, the owners have more gold than the players. And here's what happens. A lot of the players in the NBA, their lifestyle was based around getting those checks. And when the lockout went into what would have been the season, guess what was happening to the players? There's no checks. They're not making any money. And since their lifestyle was based around that check and they weren't getting the check anymore, things started to get desperate for a lot of the players. And the reason why the players ended up settling and accepting less money in 98 and in 2011, even though they presented it as if they got what they wanted, they damn sure did not. They got taken to the cleaners both times, NBA, and they're going to get, if there's ever a lockout again, they're going to get taken to the cleaners again. And the reason why they were able to do it, because the players, their pockets weren't as deep as the owners. So the owners are looking at it like, look, if we need to go a whole year and not play NBA basketball and we don't pay y'all any money, y'all don't make no money, we don't make any money off the NBA, and everybody loses money here, this is a war of attrition. A war of attrition is when both sides are losing, and it's just a matter of who can take the losses for longer before one side gives up. And in a war of attrition that is based around money, whoever has the most money is going to win. Because the side with the most money, we can afford to lose money for a year. You can't afford to lose money for a year. So eventually you're going to come around and give me what I want because you can't afford to keep losing money. You can't afford to not get a paycheck. I already got the money. I'm the one writing the check, so I got money. You ain't got no money. This is what the owners are saying to the players. And now, of course, that's not all players, but it was a majority of them. And whenever there's a lockout coming up, any of you who read about this stuff or hear the news, what happens is the players' union will say to the players, or just a union period, will say to the workers, hey, there may be a work stoppage. We may not have work for some time. So all of you need to start saving up your money. All right, cut back on your expenditures because there may be a period of time in which there's no money coming in. And if you run out of money, now you're going to be in a tough situation, and now you're going to be in a poor negotiating position. All of you know how negotiations work. Who has the leverage in a negotiation? Whoever has the willingness and the ability to walk away. So the owners had the willingness and ability to walk away from the players because, again, the players are going to eventually go broke. The players will go broke before the owners go broke. And that's the reason why they were able to get what they wanted out of the NBA in those negotiations. Now, this year, coincidentally, the WNBA, their union agreement with the league is coming up. And this one is a little bit of a different beast for several reasons. First of all, WNBA hasn't turned a profit yet, so it's not like the NBA, like this money machine. Secondly, the WNBA is a bunch of women, and they will much more leverage emotions and public sentiment in their favor than a man can. Because a lot of NBA people who watch the NBA had no sympathy for the players back then with all the money that they were allegedly making. No one had sympathy for the players in the NBA at the time of those negotiations. But a lot of people will have sympathy for the women in a similar situation. If a similar situation comes up, the women are going to get a lot more sympathy than the men got in the same situation. And because of the way the WNBA is set up, their league is funded by the NBA. So it's a completely different beast of a conversation. So when that collective bargaining agreement comes up this year, you're going to notice it's going to be a whole different atmosphere to the negotiations than how it was with the NBA the last two times that it happened. So I'm telling you all that just to give you all a little bit of a history lesson to go along with everything that we're talking about here. But let's get into the conversation now. We are at 30,000 likes, folks. Let's get into the comments. I'm not even going to take a bathroom break here today. So let's get straight to it. Let's see what we got over on YouTube. O-Dog said, I was never an Iverson fan. He wasn't a good ambassador for the game or the league. Well, here's my pushback to that, O-Dog, is that Iverson was, I don't know what you mean by a good ambassador. He was a good ambassador for the type of fan that the NBA did bring in through him. He brought in a lot of fans. He brought in a lot of fans because of his street credibility. Let's just call it that, quote unquote, and because of his background story and the way he played. He was a small little guy who was like less than 170 pounds, and he played this street brand of basketball that for the team that was built around him, it worked. So it gave a lot of hope to people that, oh, maybe the little guy who's from the ghetto can actually make it. Now, we ain't seen another Allen Iverson since, but he gave hope to a lot of people. So in that way, he brought in a certain element of fan that I don't think the NBA actually wanted, but they got it anyway. That's what Allen Iverson did. So that's what I would say he did. David Stern did not want the kind of fan that Allen Iverson attracted, but he got it anyway. He couldn't stop it. And O-Dog said Stern was a J. That's what I thought. O-Dog said Adam Silver, the current commissioner, he's also a J, but he's a spineless worm. I generally agree with that. I'm not a fan of Adam Silver. He's the current commissioner of the NBA, and he is weak. David Stern was a bulldog. David Stern didn't play. So, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Allen Iverson made a rap album in like 2000 or something like that. And Allen Iverson never officially released the album because when the album leaked, when what was on the album leaked, a bunch of reporters made news stories about what was on the album. And this is the story. Actually, Allen Iverson, I think, has confirmed this story. David Stern, who was the commissioner of the NBA, called Allen Iverson to a meeting in New York at his office. And David Stern told Allen Iverson, you cannot release this album. Because on that album, Allen Iverson was rapping the way a lot of gangster rappers rap today. It's accepted. But back then, this was, it wasn't even that gangster rap didn't exist. It already existed. We already had Dr. Dre, Snoop, etc., Tupac, Big, all that. But we hadn't heard an athlete working in a corporate space say the stuff that Allen Iverson was saying on an official album. So David Stern called Allen Iverson to his office in New York. And he told Allen Iverson, if you release this album, I'm going to suspend you for an entire year. I'll suspend you for a year. You won't make any money. You will not get paid. And David Stern, again, David Stern's a lawyer. So if you really know the law, the way David Stern did, he could figure out a loophole in the rules that would allow him to do that just under the morality clause. Every company has morality clause in the contracts. He could suspend Allen Iverson for a year. He threatened Iverson. And Iverson believed the threat. Therefore, he never put the album out. So that was one of the things that, again, when we talk about the element that Allen Iverson brought to the NBA, that's what the NBA didn't want. But again, they got it anyway. O-Dog said, it looks like a post-retirement picture, LOL, but him and Pippen usually did press conferences in full suits. Yeah, that's what I mean. Michael Jordan was always in a suit. And this picture you're looking at, yeah, it looked like he was probably older there. That's a good catch. Let me see if I can find we can just find a picture of Michael Jordan in a suit. Let me just say that because Michael Jordan was always in a suit. When Michael Jordan knew he was going to be seen, he was always in a suit. Whereas Allen Iverson knew he was going to be seen, he was not in a suit. So there's a lot of pictures of Michael Jordan after retirement in suits, of course. But here's a picture of Michael Jordan when they retired looks like they retired his number, and you can tell by how thin he is. This is when Michael Jordan this is like right after playing. This might have been when he retired the first time, when he was playing baseball. So this is Michael Jordan. This is at the event at the Chicago Bulls Stadium where they're honoring him. And you see Spike Lee is in the background. Look at Spike Lee looking all young in the background. You see Spike Lee there? What's he wearing? A suit. You see this baseball player here in a brown suit. His name is Frank Thomas. He played for the Chicago White Sox. So Frank Thomas in a suit. Spike Lee, suit jacket. Michael Jordan, suit. All right, this is the way it was in those times. I think that's Michael Jordan's wife right there in the middle. I don't know if that's her. It might be Frank Thomas's wife. But you see all the men you could see in the foreground of this image. This is interestingly enough. All the men you see in the foreground of this image, they all got suits on. All of them. Even the people we don't know who they are. They all got on suits. This is in the 90s. It ain't like it was that long ago. I mean, 90s was kind of long ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And Michael Jordan was noted for his suit wear, even though his suits were way oversized. And look at how big his suits were. Now, his suits don't even fit properly, but the fact that he had one on was the point. So let's see. All right, but y'all get the point. Michael Jordan was often in a suit. And let's see, where were we? O-Dog said, I used to believe the dress code was just you hate on black people, but now that I'm a man, I'm totally for it. That thug hip-hop era was bad for the league. Yes, it was. It was very bad for the league. And I understood why they were doing the dress code, but a lot of people framed it as, oh, this is just racist. They just don't like the black guys, and they don't like the element that the black guys are bringing. And my response to that is, yeah, so it's a corporate league. Most of the money coming from white people. So a lot of people just didn't understand that at the time. Fit Business says, meanwhile, LeBron is wearing the same do-rag every other interview and pre-game warm-ups. LOL. Yeah, nowadays. Nowadays, again, they pretty much relax the dress code, even though they don't talk about it. Fit Business said Ben Balenciaga Simmons. Yeah, Ben Simmons with the fashion. A lot of people are into fashion stuff, but then they're not playing well, and that's what I mean. You can't be looking like you planned out your fashion before the game, then get in the game and not do anything in the game. Now you look crazy. That's why Ben Simmons started to look crazy. O Dog said it works for the WNBA. Their women, their appeals, and their beauty. Maybe. For WNBA players, I want to see you play basketball. I don't care what you look like. I just want to see can you play. If I'm watching it for the basketball, I want to see you play. Uh, D Remedy said Stern's last name fit him. Yes, it did. And the NBA flourished under David Stern. I mean, it's flourishing now still because the money just keeps coming in. So even if someone does a bad job, the money's still coming in. Someone could not know what they're doing, and the NBA is still going to do well, generally speaking. But David Stern helped turn the NBA global. Global, that's a fact. All right, he helped spearhead you leveraging Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson the way he did. He's the one who pushed for NBA players to play in the Olympics, which took the game global, and he ruled with an iron fist. That's one thing they'll say about David Stern. The man ruled with an iron fist, and everybody respected his position. Ohio J says, this is the most American thing ever to compare about wearing a uniform at work. Either wear a uniform or go get another job. Yeah, that's what you could say if they didn't have a union. If they got a union, that's the reason why it's a conversation. Ohio J on Instagram said, Jordan's best quote was, Republicans buy shoes too. Now, it's disputed whether he actually said it. Michael Jordan said he never said that. But a lot of people say he did say it, but let's just say the sentiment went that direction. That's why he probably wore suits everywhere because he realized the image is everything. Well, that part, the second part of yours is actually completely accurate. Michael Jordan said that himself, by the way, Ohio J. He has books. Michael Jordan's written a couple books. He talked about that. He said, I always showed up in a suit and I always made sure my car was perfectly clean. And the reason why is because I knew everybody was looking at me every time I showed up somewhere in public. And I knew I wanted to uphold a certain professional image. So that came straight out of his mouth. Ohio says Dennis Rodman showed up in sweatpants and T-shirts and outplayed everyone. He didn't care about showing up to work cute. Now his after-work dress code is very questionable. LOL. Yeah, I never saw Dennis Rodman in a suit. And Dennis Rodman, at the same time, Dennis Rodman didn't have a bunch of corporate sponsorships. So again, you got to think about the whole picture, the big picture of how he was being looked at. He didn't have corporate sponsorships, so he didn't have the same concerns as Michael Jordan did. So let's see what we got over on TikTok. Can we get the likes up to 40,000, folks? We're at 34,000. Can we get the likes up to 40,000? By the way, you can see the link to get my book, The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. You can get that book for free. Just cover the shipping. Go to that link, thirddaybook.com. Unfortunately, on TikTok, you can't click on the links. Excuse me. You got to just type that into your browser, thirddaybook.com. But the book is free. Just cover the shipping. Ashley Wright, good morning. I think I'll be able to get through all the comments here today. And by the way, when I get down to the bottom of these comments, some of y'all give me suggestions on what topic should I address that maybe you have noticed that I haven't talked about yet. I'm open to suggestions. Maybe you might know about something that I haven't seen yet. Or if I hear enough of you talking about it, maybe I saw it and didn't think it was worth it. But if a bunch of you are saying you want to hear me talk about it, then maybe I will. Let's see. Donner says, Donner 24, I worked for Starbucks before and we had a uniform policy. You might have been at a non-union store, Donner. So there are some stores that are union and some are not. User said, I understand the financial part, but not the individual BS, not a Starbucks customer either. Yeah, I mean, I understand both of it. Now, I can think it's some nonsense that they're just leveraging for the conversation. But again, if you're trying to get your point across or get your way, then you got to leverage whatever you can. So I get why they're doing it. I wouldn't do it, but I get why they're doing it. Downey says, $5 says, is the alphabet community LOL. Well, there are videos online of the Starbucks workers who are doing these comparisons. They look like a whole bunch of they, thems, he, hims, she, hers, as far as I'm concerned. Just my subjective view. Donner said, most companies have a dress policy. Yes, most do. Starbucks has a dress policy. It's the union stores that are pushing back, not just all of them. User said, yes, more victims, SMH. Well, that's how it works. Being a victim works. Again, victims are the business and retain the right to have their employees looking professional. Correct. J Bow said, why do people put up signs, then block them, SMH? What sign are you talking about? Kathleen said they can still do what they want. Doesn't matter when they did it. Well, on some level, that's correct. Donnelly said modern protest is just pouting, TBH. No, pretty much. Heck said, wow, that's a hill to die on. There are much bigger issues out there if you want to play victim. Well, not for a person who works at Starbucks. I mean, what other issue are they concerned with? Again, you're making $38,000 a year working at Starbucks. I think that's the biggest issue they got. Gary said, I don't believe a new dress code is a negotiable item. Starbucks can provide shirts and hats. Well, this is why it's a conversation, because it looks like it is a negotiable item because they have a union. That's what they're claiming. They're claiming because of the union that they can argue this. Jeff Johnson, good morning. Oh, yeah, says almost like there was a dress code. Yeah, well, the apron is part of the dress code, but now they're trying to expand the dress code. That's what it is. Jermaine says, something tells me they did this the same year they sold the Sonics. I don't remember what year that was. Texan said they need to go get a new job. Well, some of them probably will. I think most people working at Starbucks making that much money probably are looking for a new job. Mr. Ohio says most sports players look zesty in their walk-in attire. Yeah, some say. Courtney, good morning. Good to see you here. Jermaine says exactly. Fan club has completed the first stage of the club. Quest Club Cheers has been unlocked for all fans to send and celebrate. Thank you, those who joined the fan club. We're at 36,000 likes on TikTok. Can we get to 50, please? Rodney said Cam Newton is a prime example. Yes, a lot of people said that about Cam Newton, is that when he came in the league, he was looking just regular. But then he started to go with the outfits, and he grew his hair out, and he had all these fancy hats that he was wearing. And at the same time, his performance started to go down. And those are not mutually exclusive. Well, Heck said, express yourself outside of work. Yeah, generally, that's always been the general concept. But in this era, people want to express themselves at work. Again, there's a reason why you see basketball players coming into the arena looking like they planned out an outfit just to walk into the locker room. Didn't used to be like that. It used to be players just walked in, and it wasn't even cameras back there. Now there's cameras back there all the time. Sunshine on my pillow said, this is why employees wear PJs and slides to work. Is that what happens at Starbucks? I don't know. Dolly Mack said they could get a second job. I got 3 jobs. Well, who knows their situation? Not everybody's looking for the same thing. James Collins, good morning. I'm his daughter said, no, it's everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere? Okay, the tipping thing. Disabled Marine vet said, I don't tip unless it's a place catering to my needs. Well, if you're buying something, disabled vet, isn't that catering to your needs? Can we get the 40,000 likes, folks, please, on TikTok? Dolly, thanks for letting people know to like the live. I'm his daughter said, I work there and they give pants. This says at Starbucks. They said they give us hats too, but that was over 15 years ago. Yeah, so it depends where, and it depends on if that store is still under the same control. Lakai Smith Strength said 2013, I worked at Starbucks at my university campus in Johnson in Wales. The dress code was a black shirt. Okay, I think that's still the shirt is still looks like they haven't changed. Carla, Indiana, good morning. Black shoes, black shirt, and pants plus green apron, no jewelry. Yeah, I don't know if they have all that anymore. I didn't see that information. The Scissor 2045 said the company needs to get together, they will lose good employees. Well, that's one way of looking at it, Scissor 2045. But at that pay rate, I think it is pretty easy to replace employees. Not perfectly easy, but relatively easy to replace employees at that pay rate. And eventually Starbucks, they may not completely do it, but Starbucks is going to automate and systematize a lot of the work that happens behind the counter, and there will be fewer people working there. That's happening in every business where it's the same thing over and over again. That's coming. And I'm sure there's a robot that can make the lattes perfectly every time rather than having a variation. You go to one Starbucks and they make it one way, then you go to a different Starbucks the next day, order the same drink and they make it differently. They put machines in there, then that won't happen. Dolly Mack said, KG is one of my first favorite players. KG was a great player, but people didn't like that contract. Well, the contract caused alarm. KG was still a very good player. He played, I guess you could say he played up to his contract, but it caused a lot of alarm when he got that. Mr. Ohio said only the top players have big contracts, the role players don't, and that's why the players folded. Well, the players in general, because you also have to consider lifestyle, Mr. Ohio J. Just because someone has a big contract doesn't mean that they can afford their lifestyle without that check. They still need the check to keep coming to keep that lifestyle up. And the reason that they folded in general is because of what I said. It doesn't even matter how big the contract is. Your contract is getting paid by the people you're fighting against. So whatever amount of money you got, they got way more than that. So they can last longer than you can without income. That's the issue. William said he'd still do a lot of work for his community. Who are you talking about? Harmony Perfume said Kaizen, gradual improvement, Japanese business strategy. Yeah, I've heard of it. Davey said wearing a tie can be unsanitary. Do you want ties falling into your latte? Well, that's why you get a clip on your tie, and also you don't lean over into the tie. So, Davey, your point is misguided, because if you're drinking coffee, whether you're a man or a woman, you don't drink the coffee by leaning over the coffee like this to where your tie can dip into the drink. What you do is you bring the coffee up to your mouth, so that there's no way that the tie can dip in anything because the coffee's all the way up here. That's actually the proper way to drink anything. And I don't even drink coffee. MH said Kyle Kuzma has the craziest pregame fits. I've never seen his pregame fit, but I'll take your word for it. On YouTube, Fit Business says, our black community people shame me for not giving back. Nobody owes anybody anything, in my opinion. Well, that's something I will talk about on my podcast. I'm talking about current events. Fit Business said, a lot of black people bring up God and the Bible when you don't give back or serve your community how they expect you to. You listen to the podcast, I've talked about those things. I'm talking about current events, so I should have been more specific. So any of you want to hear me talk about, is there a certain topic that is a current event that any of you is interested in or you've heard about and you haven't heard me talk about, but you would want me to, you can drop it in the comments. While I wait, I will tell you all that I do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern. And these are usually on current events. We're talking about something that's happening in the news these days. If you want to hear me talk about evergreen stuff, mindset, business, personal development, professional development, making yourself better, marketing, sales, entrepreneurship, listen to my podcast. I call mine a masterclass, but you can find it on the podcast app. It is called Work on Your Game. It comes out for free every single day. Again, it's called Work on Your Game. I'll show you all what it looks like so you can see it. I'm looking on this. I'm going to pull up the Spotify version. This one right here, Work on Your Game. You see the artwork there at the top of the screen. It looks like that. So if you look up on Apple, you'll see the same artwork. Again, just look up the title, Work on Your Game, and look up my name, Dre Baldwin, which you can see right there, Dre Baldwin. While I'm waiting on other topic suggestions that any of you might have, if you want to join my group coaching program, it's called The Circle. It's $97 per month. You get access. You will have clear action plans and action steps, and you get access to my free Dre GPT chatbot, which we actually charge for now. But if you're a member of The Circle, you don't have to pay for it. It comes as part of the membership in The Circle. Again, $97 a month, 2 live group coaching calls a month. We do hot seats. Everybody gets called on. Everyone gets their issues addressed. Everyone knows exactly what to do moving forward based on the conversation that was had on the live calls. Next call will be the first Saturday in June. So 1 week from tomorrow, it's going to be the first call in the month of June. So you can join that by going to the link in my profile or the pinned comment or the pinned link you see on whatever app you're watching me on. There's a link to The Circle, or just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You'll see information about The Circle. So over on TikTok, Heck said, what rights has Trump taken away? Why is he despised? Well, that's a very broad topic. I've talked about Trump a lot, but I would probably find something specific he's done or is being talked about if I did that. Harmony said, possible exit strategy for Target to recover? Maybe. It depends on what's happened. I know people are saying Target has gone down, and some people say it's because of DEI. That's part of it, but it's a multivariate issue. It's probably multiple things. But it would have to last. 1 quarter is not enough. I would have to see it. It would have to happen over quarter by quarter by quarter. These days, personally, I'm an investor in Target, and when I see Target's price going down, what I do is go get more of it, because buy it when it's down, and I believe it's going to go back up. So I don't know if this is something that's a long-term thing with Target. I think it's a short-term thing, and people are trying to say it's because of DEI, which doesn't really make any sense. If black people, let's just say black people, are allegedly upset about DEI and that's why they stopped going to Target, it doesn't add up on several fronts. First of all, I hear a lot of black people saying that DEI mostly benefits white females. So if that's the case, why are black people getting mad about DEI being stripped away from a company since all they're stripping away is benefits to white people? Secondly, if black people can mobilize and get at Target over something like DEI policy, then why can't black people mobilize and do something that actually matters, that will actually give to the community? All they're taking away from Target ain't doing anything for the community. So if black people did that and they're responsible for what's happening at Target, explain to me why black people ain't mobilizing for something of actual substance. So that's the reason why I'm dubious of this whole concept that, oh, this is all happening because black people boycotted Target. I don't think so. It doesn't add up to me. And if that is the case, again, why ain't black people doing something that actually matters? Fuck Target. That's the best you can come up with. That's the one thing we can mobilize for, is not buying stuff from Target. It doesn't make sense to me. Foster said, how long will the Diddy trial be? According to what I've heard, when it first came out, they said 6 to 8 weeks, but the prosecution told the judge, the last I heard, that they think they'd be done even earlier than they thought. So that instead of this being a 6-week trial, it might actually only be a 5-week trial. So they're saying that they might be finished earlier than expected. Now, Diddy is a topic we will come back to because new stuff keeps coming out in the Diddy trial. So I'll probably talk about that probably once a week. This week, the topic was, I thought the case was looking weak so far. And I've listened to some other people talk about it. I've listened to some lawyers talk about it. I heard Alan Dershowitz talk about it the other day on the Megyn Kelly show. Megyn Kelly's a lawyer herself, or a former lawyer herself. And what it seems to be now, according to what I heard Alan Dershowitz say, Alan Dershowitz knows his stuff. He's actually a very good lawyer, very good at explaining stuff in plain language, is that they think Diddy might get convicted because they're trashing his character. And that could be enough. I said that myself this week, that they're trashing his character, which is not what he's on trial for. He's not on trial for being a bad guy. He's also not on trial for being an abusive boyfriend. He's on trial for RICO, sex trafficking, those things. They haven't proven that yet. But because they're making him look like such a bad guy, and because of his status in the world, and that video of him beating his girlfriend's ass, he might get convicted anyway. And what Alan Dershowitz is saying is that if he gets convicted based on that, then he and his lawyers can just appeal the ruling and they can win on appeal. So then he'll end up winning. So he'll lose and then win, according to what Dershowitz is postulating right now, given what we know. But things can change because we haven't gotten all the testimony yet. And there's still more people to testify against him. But Diddy has good lawyers. All right. One thing about Diddy is the guy has very good lawyers. And those lawyers are worth their weight in lawyer fees, and they're going to do their best to get him off. I think right now it's still 50-50. I think the case is weak, but that doesn't mean he's not going to lose, because you're trying to convince jurors, and jurors are people, and they can still convict him. So if ChatGPT was deciding the case, I think Diddy would walk. But people ain't ChatGPT. They are not logical. They are emotional. So he could still lose. As far as what we see so far, it's still early though. I think we're not even. When did this case start? So we're only about halfway through. So it's still time. Still time on the clock. Foster said, I heard a couple experts saying innocent verdict expected. Yeah, so based on what I just said, there's some people saying, as I said this case is weak. I talked about this in my live earlier this week. So Foster 2534, I don't know if you heard my live earlier this week. Can we get to 50,000 likes, folks, while we're here? We're at 40,000 on TikTok. So I believe the case is weak. But again, it depends on what angle you're looking at it from. And also, let's keep in mind that Diddy's attorneys have not yet got to call their own witnesses. So again, we haven't even gotten halfway through this case yet. Only the prosecution has called their witnesses, but Diddy hasn't called his witnesses. His lawyers haven't called his witnesses yet. And it doesn't mean they're going to do an equal amount. They may not have as many witnesses, but they get to make their case, which they haven't gotten to yet. Right now, they're just playing defense, but they get to kind of play offense and take the initiative when it's their turn. But the prosecution has to finish. And they are claiming that they're going to finish faster than expected. So good thing about the Diddy trial is at least he's getting a fast trial. He's getting a speedy trial, which is in the Constitution. So at least he's getting that. So Alphabet said, why did they choose to go RICO? Yeah, because they're claiming that he had a conspiracy going. And the conspiracy doesn't have to be he has co-defendants, because a lot of people, as part of the conspiracy that they look like they're trying to prove, are people who are testifying against him. So they participated in what essentially could be labeled as a crime, or they were accomplices to crimes that Diddy was committing. But because they're testifying for the prosecution, they probably have been granted immunity from prosecution. So these people who have come up, like his assistant Capricorn, like Cassie herself, probably some of his security people, they probably did things that legally they could be held accountable for and taken to court on their own merits for what they did. But because they're testifying and helping the prosecution's case, basically cooperating with the federal government, they probably have been granted immunity from prosecution, even though they get on the stand and admit to actually being accessories to crimes. Because you can get what's the word, indicted just for the fact that you were involved in a crime and you knew you were involved in a crime. That's a crime. You knew you were involved. You knew you had something to do with it, or you witnessed a crime. You didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. You didn't stop it. You can be prosecuted for that. So I think a lot of the witnesses that the prosecution have called, they have all gotten immunity. We know Cassie got immunity, but there's probably others too that we don't even know, or that I haven't heard. Because I like watching. There's a YouTube channel. You don't have to watch it. You can just listen to it, called Law and Crime. I usually listen to them, and they have a reporter there every day, and they break it down in detail. Everybody's talking about it a lot. So if you talk about the legal system for a living, this is gold for you, because there's always something new to talk about. So that's why I think they went RICO, because they're claiming that it was a conspiracy and he was doing it across state lines. We're at 42,000 likes, folks, please. Can we get to 50? Lakia Smith said, who I got winning NBA Finals? Probably OKC. I think they'll probably win no matter who comes out the East. Michelle, good to see you. Good morning to you. Rahek said, women who go for the money become victims when it's not worth it, yet had the power to walk anytime. Well, that's what's being argued in court right now. We don't know yet. All right. Again, this is the whole argument is going to be about Cassie forever after she already testified. And she had her baby, as a matter of fact, 2 days ago. So remember, Cassie was pregnant. So she just gave birth to that child. I believe I heard it was a boy. Like 2 days, it was Friday. On Wednesday, she gave birth to a baby. So some people will say she could have always walked away. Why did she stay? Why she keep coming back? Why was she texting him this and saying she loved him, et cetera, et cetera? This woman's just dumb. And I understand some people having that frame. At the same time, you have to understand that if the prosecution is to be believed and her testimony is to be believed, she was under strict control by Diddy. She could not just leave the relationship because he was very abusive. He mentally abused her. He emotionally abused her. He physically abused her. And he was controlling her career and her life. So where was she going to go? Anywhere she went, he could have found her. And this is the case that the prosecution is building, is that this guy had so much reach and so much power that he was doing a whole bunch of wild shit in front of people, and nobody stopped him. Nobody got in his way, and nobody called the cops because they were afraid of what would happen to them if they did anything to win against his wishes. And they're doing a good job of painting that picture right now. This is one of the reasons why he might get convicted. So y'all got to just listen to the people giving you reviews of what's happening in the testimony, because you can't bring cameras in there, so we can't watch the court case. But you can listen to the people who are breaking down the testimony, is that this guy had a whole lot of money, a whole lot of power, a whole lot of reach, and he could pretty much get to anybody he wanted to get to if he wanted to get to you. So if you see your boss acting like that, what are you going to do? All right, it sounds good to say you would have fought back, but that it sounds good. It's the same way people say, well, if I was in the G country back when the H man was doing all those crazy things, I would have fought back. I would have said no. I would have said this is wrong. Like, yeah, that sounds good. You know where you would have ended up? You would end up with your head chopped off. So it sounds good to say you would have went against the grain when you actually probably would have went with the grain, because going against the grain would have got you killed back then. The same way that you'll see a white person these days saying something like, well, if I was around during slavery times, I wouldn't have had any slaves. If I was living in the South, I wouldn't have any slaves. That was bad and is immoral and you shouldn't do that. Yeah. And then they say they would have spoke out against slavery. Now, not having them wouldn't have made you a target, but speaking out against it would have got you killed back in those days. So it's always it's grandstanding when people talk about what they would have did if they were in a certain situation back in the day, simply because of the way we look at it now. But if you were there at that time dealing with the situation as it was, you would not have nearly the courage that people claim that they got on the internet these days. You would have lost your life going against the grain of Mr. H over in the G country, or you would have lost your life even as a white person arguing against slavery in the Deep South back in the day. So anyway, Alphabet said, Rico is such a high bar. I think a bad choice. Well, the feds usually win their cases, so it is a high bar. I agree with you. That's a high bar. And at the same time, I think they're trying to put this guy away. They're trying to put him away for the rest of his life. So that's why they went for a big one. And again, the way that they're building this case, is all about his character. They're making this a referendum on who he is as a person. So it's a bet. I mean, when you go to court, you're placing a bet. Either my side is going to convince the jury or your side is going to convince the jury, but somebody's going to be convinced. And the prosecution has a tougher charge because they got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Again, looking at the case as we know right now, I think Diddy's in a good spot because he has really good lawyers, and they are going to hammer the jury that, hey, this is not about who he is as a person. That's not what you're judging here. You're judging, did he commit these crimes, and has it been proven beyond a reasonable doubt? I would say, as an objective, logical person, no, they have not proven it. But I'm not on the jury. So again, all the things that we're saying don't really matter because the jury's decision is all that actually matters. So we'll see where this ends up. So we will wrap this one up here, folks. And Monday morning, we will have a new topic. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. We'll see. I'll come up with some stuff, or some stuff will come up to me. I don't have to come up with it. Some stuff will come up to me over the weekend. Get my free book, The Third Day, by going to thirddaybook.com. Join my group coaching program, The Circle, by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com or clicking the links in my profile, or send me a DM. My assistant will get back to you with information and links about that. Thank you to my moderators and my consistent people who are coming in here. Carla, I see you in here. Dolly Mack was in here. Michelle, I see you in here. Carla was in here. Not Carla, but Courtney was in here earlier as well. So I appreciate all of you. My commentators over on YouTube, O-Dog, The Remedy Fit Business, I see you all. And also on Instagram, I see you folks as well. Everybody have a great Friday. We will be in a new month when we get here on Monday. So make sure you write your goals down for the month of June. And join my group coaching program to help you with that. And fresh on me. But everybody have a great weekend. I will see you all on Monday. We are out of here.